Yo, what up? This is Izento, and I wanted to talk about the best of one versus best of three. And I just wanted to create this video because I don't think anyone has encompassed the whole argument within one actual video or one actual article. So I wanted to do that for you guys. And basically, the main points that I wanted to get across were the argument of competitive integrity, which is that best of threes are viewed as being more, competitive, and that the better team is going to win out in the end because there's a larger sample size, right? And then best of ones are susceptible to cheese, and that basically a team, lower tier team even, can just pull out a random pick and be able to upset a top tier team. And then there's the argument that best of one has better viewership, and I guess this is coming from Riot as well. And I think it's pretty evident that best of one has better viewership overall, because with a best of three stream, a lot of people want that immediate satisfaction of seeing who actually won the match. So they might tune in at game 2, or even still, there's dual streams, which completely disrupt the whole esports ecosystem for all the teams. And I want to dig into Emily Rand's article actually, because I think it's fantastic, and I think she lays this down perfectly in saying that sponsorships benefit greatly from a single stream, or sponsors, I guess, and that there's a balance between the top tier and lower tier teams because they're on the same stream. So a person is more likely to look through the whole single stream rather than having to choose between one stream or the other stream, because TSM is playing on this stream, or Cloud9 is playing on this stream, or they're both facing each other, and then Envy and Echo Fox is facing on the other stream, right? So this is a really good point, and I think best of ones, generally that's why it's been chosen over best of threes for now, because it helps with sponsors, and it helps with the whole ecosystem and money. And her article also says that Riot is a game publisher and ultimately wants people to play the game, and they use esports as an advertisement for the game itself. And I think this is extremely true, and a lot of people have said that maybe there should be a little bit more separation between the esports aspect and the game publisher itself. I mean, you can look at other companies like, say, Valve, for instance. They're pretty offhands when it comes to Counter-Strike Go. Some would say too offhands. She also covers this aspect of international success and how it doesn't really matter as much as domestic success. And I don't think she touched on that as much as I would have liked, and that basically, to break that down, is that the brands aren't looking for an international reach. It's all about reach, about how many fans you can influence, I guess, to buy your product, right? Because that's the whole point of a sponsorship, is to use that team's attention, the attention that Bjergsen is getting, the attention that Doublelift is getting, the attention that Piglet, the attention that whomever is getting, to then sell that product through their lens, right? For Bjergsen to say like, hey, buy this HTC phone or whatever. So this international reach, though, a lot of companies aren't looking to do that because they're looking to sell to a smaller market, because they aren't that big of a company yet. I mean, Samsung is quite a big company, and they don't mind having that international reach, right? Because they're all over the whole world. They sell a ton of electronics. So they don't mind having that international reach. Intel doesn't mind having that international reach, because that's what they're going for. That's why they host a entire tournament with all different teams from around the world coming to this tournament to compete, right? So there are certain sponsors that are looking for a big reach and a small reach. And that's the whole problem with the EU and how it's splitting into 4 regions. I guess Riot is thinking that you can get more endemic sponsorships, right? People that are smaller that, maybe you're based in France and you want a French sponsorship, right? So that's, I guess, that whole thing in a nutshell. I just wanted to touch on that more. I don't think she broke that down as well as I would have liked. But I think 2 of the big differences between best of 1 and best of 3 is mentality and draft, right? Draft, of course, because of cheese, right? And that you can just pick a weird champion and it happens to counter the meta champions, or being ahead of the meta. That's also another thing. And many people have also referenced too that TSM are bad at best of 1s, right? And they referenced that spring split where they went terribly, like they wouldn't have placed in first place if it was just a best of 1 series, because they lost so many first games, and how they're a strong best of 3 team but a really weak best of 1 team because of their bad initial planning but their strong adaptation. And then, of course, there's the mentality aspect of, which I guess I'm meaning experimentation or game planning, and that you're more willing to experiment in a best of 3 format, or you're more willing to have a solid game plan, or I guess focus on a solid game plan for a best of 1 format instead. And I want to switch gears, I guess, and jump to Kelsey Moser's article video, because I think it's very good as well too. I'll link that down in the description as well. And I think she's correct in saying that scrims can't replace stage time. I don't know where this came from because Riot had released their article and they had said that with the introduction of best of 1s, they are going to help the teams I guess, make their practice time more effective, probably with better practice tools or something. Maybe the practice tool will have multiplayer so that they could set up dragon fights within, 2 minutes or whatever. But it's you can't replicate the pressure of a stage match. There's just not the same stakes, right? Because that goes on your record on a stage match versus scrims. It doesn't matter. You can lose as many times as you want and it doesn't matter. You're just there to improve your strategy. And different games have different amounts of pressure, right? There's a different amount of pressure for a championship, for the NALCS championship game, right? There's a different amount of pressure for a relegation match. There's a different amount of pressure for a top tier team facing a lower tier team. Like, there are different amounts of pressure when it relates to stage games and scrim games. So it's not something that you can just easily replicate no matter how hard you try. And also the argument of group stages are best of 1, so what's the point of best of 3 if you can't get out of groups, right? Which NA has had a problem with doing. And I guess teams need to get better at initial game planning. That's just the gist of it, right? Which can be still done in a best of 3 setting. And that's that these teams have had a crutch on the other 2 games to be able to set themselves up to adapt. So they don't need to come into the game with a strong game plan in the beginning, in the first game. They don't need to meticulously research their opponents in order to know exactly what they're going to do on the first game, right? And so these best of 1s, they reward innovation, right? They reward being on top of patches, being ahead of the meta, initial planning and insider knowledge. And when I say insider knowledge, I mean opponents' picks or research on their counters and constant scrutiny of tendencies, of your own tendencies or their tendencies and your current strategies, right? And best of three rewards consistency. It rewards adaptation through mistakes, drafting. It rewards all of these things. So there's not a saying of, best of threes is just completely better, because yes, best of ones reward a different aspect of a team, but that's not to say that you cannot practice that sort of mentality, as I was saying before, of taking a best of one with a attitude of saying, well, if we fucking lose this game, then we're donezo. So maybe we should go into this game with a very strong game plan. Maybe we should research our opponents very heavily in order to actually win the first game. So I do think truly that best of threes have the most competitive integrity, and I think it rewards the most. And I think that you can do the same thing in the best of three as you can in the best of one, right? Besides the whole broadcasting thing, I do agree with that. And then there's the whole point of best of threes being better for rookies, and that essentially if you win the first game, then you can sub in your rookie for the second game. If he loses that game, hey, it doesn't matter. You could just sub in your starter again and then win out the series, especially against weaker teams, right? Or you place your rookie in against a weaker team for the first match, and then if that doesn't work, you just place in your starter for the other two games to win out the series. And while yes, this is true, I do agree with that sentiment that best of threes are better for rookies, but I don't think a lot of people are taking into account that with franchising coming in or no relegations, that was the whole point of why people were afraid to put rookies in the first place, is that they didn't want to risk their whole team. They didn't want to risk their whole company failing because of a rookie and because of going into relegations and into the Challenger Series where no one gives a shit about you anymore and you lose all your sponsorships, right? No one wanted to take a chance on these rookies. So if you were to balance out the best of ones with no relegations, I think it's going to equal out about the same amount as it is, I guess, currently a little bit, probably better, I would say, because relegations is a really fucking scary thing for teams. But I just think it's completely foolish to think that without best of threes, rookies aren't going to get a chance to play. I don't think that's true at all. And I think best of ones give an immediate satisfaction, as I was saying, and I think it's more in tune with the casual viewer, and that you can tune in at any time and any point of the game or the stream and be on the same level as everyone else. So I think it's very easy and very relatable. And Riot, they made this statement that there's this oversaturation of esports content, and that makes the user choose between watching the LCS and playing the game. And Kelsey has said that Riot has tailored their game to be similar to the player's experience and relatable on a lower level, i.e. getting rid of lane swaps and things like that. And this goes back to Emily's argument of Riot being a game publisher and having a conflict of interest. But I know that Riot, they want to appeal to a broader audience, and I kind of agree with that, right? And that League of Legends already has a very high skill floor, right? Or a viewability floor I mean, you look at games like Counter-Strike, it's not very hard to understand. You have a counter-terrorist team and a terrorist team. Terrorist team trying to plant a bomb and win the match. The counter-terrorist team trying to stop them. That's really it. And you have guns and you shoot people, right? It's not very hard to understand fundamentally. So it's a very watchable esport. League of Legends, on the other hand, you have 500 plus skills. So if Ash shoots an arrow, you don't know what the hell that arrow is going to do unless you've kind of played the game or you've seen enough of the game in order to know what that's going to do. You don't know what Echo's ult just did. Like, oh, he rewound back in time and so he has health back or something. Like, okay, like what's the cooldown on that? How much can he do that? There's a lot of information that needs to be understood in order to understand how to watch League of Legends. So Riot is trying to make that appeal to a broader audience of just their own player base itself. So I can't really fault them for doing that because the audience itself is somewhat finite, right? Because you have had to play the game to kind of even understand how to watch it. And ultimately, I think Best of Ones is good too because I think it might help EU viewership, right? If there's more time in the day for people to watch games and not be overloaded with watching League of Legends, then they'll have more time to watch other games. They'll have more time to watch other regions such as EU. I know I'll certainly start watching EU more because of Best of Ones. Even though I'm like kind of an analyst, and I probably should watch all these other regions and stuff if I do have more time. But I still think it'll partially help EU to some extent, not an insane amount, but I think it'll still help. So ultimately, I am in favor of Best of Ones because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter of best of threes, competitive integrity or whatnot. It matters if these players or these teams are making money and if esports or League of Legends esports can survive as a whole. And if it can't survive as a whole, then what the hell is the point in best of threes in the beginning anyways? So I'm in favor of Best of Ones, without a doubt. For now.